Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishnan Nair, and here basically we are discussing about the city creation. How basically the software industry and Bollywood industry are connected, and here basically we are telling that how Bollywood groups are writing the user stories. So before Bollywood groups are basically just a writer, whatever they are told, that only basically they are going to do, right? They are only going to set, but they are not basically the creators, right? They are just doing whatever they are supposed to do. That's all, right? So this is the basically the task of the Bollywood groups. Whatever they are supposed to do basically, they are only basically doing. So here the main concern is who is telling the Bollywood groups that you have this type of basically the cities are going to create, and this type of user story basically you have to design. So they are basically not a nuclear power plant groups, they are not the energy groups, they are not the power company groups, they are just a Bollywood groups. They are the actors, and they basically represent the task basically which is ongoing in the visible format. For example, uh, one person is basically the very big person. Basically, he is a big businessman. He basically given his health care to one of the Bollywood director. He's a producer, right? Now basically he become the producer. So he told that you can take care of my health. In this basically you can use this all doctors. So basically he have the doctors, right? So doctors are not basically the god also. Whatever information they are going to get, according to that only they are going to do the treatment, right? Because they are not the god also. This is the one thing. Then basically the thing basically came that uh, that Bollywood basically groups tracked that after 1 month you are going to get this type of data in your oxygen power supply, because you have done this all activities according to the food basically you have eaten. So just see basically how the foods are basically controlling the human brains. So that's basically very dangerous also, right? Because the brain is going to do the certain level of process. Brain is going to do the certain level of process, and foods are basically controlling the brains. So industry basically has reached up to the certain levels. That also basically you can say. So assume that that person basically, that Bollywood group basically told to that person, to the businessman, that you are going to get this type of oxygen data after 1 month, and you are going to get this whole diseases due to that oxygen power supply, because he has eaten the foods, right? And according to that he basically done the activities also. So when the food basically you eat, that time basically the blood cells gets generates, and according to that basically if you don't do the activities which is blood cells is telling to do, then basically it's not going to activate, right? The blood cells will not going to activate. Repeating the word, if he is eating the food, certain level of foods, because foods are basically not going to be permanent. It's a temporary process, and it's a temporary blood cells, but it basically converts to permanent when you do the certain level of activities. For example, one food, one person, but that businessman basically has eaten, right? So just see the medical industry also basically how up to their professional level are basically there, because each and everything basically activities they have to display in front of the satellite group also. So just see the medical industry, how they are clear about the thing basically, how the nuclear energy power companies and energy groups are very clear about their activities. So what that businessman basically has eaten the food, and assume that there are two conditions. One, according to the fluid the blood cells has generated, the blood cells are generated. According to that basically he is going to do the activities, or he is basically not going to do the activities, right? one is thing is going to happen. Assume that he basically has not done the activity. The blood cells is supposed to blood cells told that brain you do this activity. That person basically, that businessman basically has not done the activity, right? So no, blood cells is not going to activate, and after certain days basically the blood cells will get automatically gets out from the body. It will basically gets deactivate, and mostly basically deactivates, and then basically it's very difficult to get activate also. Why? Basically if you are eating that same food again, then basically it might get activate, but up to that level basically I don't think that the medical science has done the fullness. Basically you can say. Fullness means you can say error. Basically this basically comes to error. Basically you can, for example, he has eaten one food, blood cells got generated. After few days basically that blood cells gets deactivate, again he basically eaten that food, right? Then basically that blood cells is not going to activate, the another basically sub blood cells is going to generate it. If the blood cells is getting activate, then basically the medical issue basically. So that's basically the medical problem, that's not our problem. So here basically we are telling that he basically has eaten the food and he has done the activity, then basically 100% that blood cells is going to activate, right? Activate means his brain is going to do the activities, whatever thing basically the blood cell system, and that basically converts into the certain level of process, whatever thing basically is going to do, and whatever things basically is going to do. Assume that task basically which he has done, he basically converted into some error. So due to that error, basically after certain basically whatever activity you do, after a certain month only basically the data gets calculated, and the nuclear power company basically sends the data back to the energy groups, and then basically that gets activated, that basically converts into the oxygen power supply. Like this the data basically has the data basically gets processed, right? So like this basically the data gets processed. So the Bollywood groups told that after certain month you are going to get this oxygen, and 100% you are going to get disease, because your blood cells all we calculated, and we have the blood cells basically we collected and given to doctors. Blood cells basically they are not collected the physical blood cells, the virtual blood cells basically. Virtual blood cells basically generates the energy, because it's a rich version, right? The technologies are up to that level only, because rich people basically that technology are also up to that level basically. So he basically given the case to the, sorry, the contract of the health of his contract to the Bollywood group. So Bollywood groups are basically creating the cities basically. So they have up to that level technologies also. So he basically told that you basically are supposed to, and assume that here basically he has created a few clones also. Assume that. So that clone basically got experimented, and then basically the final medicine basically he got, right? Final medicine basically he got. So before basically in advance basically he can't have that medicine, right? Until basically don't get the disease, the disease gets activated. For example, after exact the time basically the disease is going to activate, that exact time only basically he has taken the medicine. So there is no need of basically he will never get disease. Why? Because the exact time basically the blood cells that disease blood cells is going to activate, that exact time only basically he has taken the medicine. So just see the power of money, just see the power of money and the power of technology basically, which has basically the world has already reached. And as the technology is getting increased, the world is basically getting into big level problems, right? Because if basically this technology is getting used in positive way, then it's basically 100% going to be no issue. But this exact technology is going to as a use as a negative, then basically you can just imagine, if any person basically is a very powerful person, and anybody gives him some problem, then basically you can just imagine it converts to, I think, war only. So that type of basically things might have happened. So here basically technologies are basically created, and basically that use basically are given by to the certain people basically. That's why basically the power basically is not given to the all people, right? The power basically is not given to the all people. Few people in this world only basically gets the power, because they know that up to the, because he's not going to use that power. The people basically who are giving the power, they know that he is not going to use the power. So that's why basically that's basically for his safety basically. If at the end basically if you want to use his power, then basically he can use, because there is only one life. There is only human only have one life, right? So power basically is requiring the power. So according to this also basically the city gets work. So here basically what actually we were discussing. Here basically we were discussing that the city creation basically comes like this only, and this is about the one person, right? Same exactly, it's connected with the each and every people of the city, but the just the difference is it's a special case, and there basically it's a bulk case. Bulk means it's a energy power company basically who are supplying the power, and they are only basically supplying the antibiotic also, because the body basically contains the antibiotic. According to that, basically they are supplying the data. So basically, you can just imagine the dangerous level basically of the world basically has already reached. The world already has reached basically. So here basically what we were discussing, that we were discussing thing is city creation basically are done by certain level of groups, right? City creation are done by the certain level of groups that are basically the government. That are basically the government. Government basically who basically are governments? The set of experts, right? Few basically the nuclear power companies group basically says that we are the basically the government, because we are basically sending each and everything, but they are not basically in front of the public, right? The government basically are in front of the public. They are representing the stuff of the nuclear power groups. So whatever oxygen basically the each and every people is going to get, they get display at that moment only, because the technology has reached up to that level basically. The data science project basically, if you, for example, I will take one example. In YouTube basically you are searching some content, right? And after some hour basically, if you open the YouTube basically, then basically whatever last search you have done, according to that video get display, right? Why? Because it's a data science, artificial intelligence basically. It's a data science, artificial intelligence comes into the picture. So YouTube basically says that you have basically searched last, and basically it might possible that you are going to search next these all videos. So that comes to artificial intelligence only, because artificial intelligence also, what is basically artificial intelligence? It's basically the system is basically not God. They have certain level of data only. They have certain level of data only, right? Then only basically they can do the process, right? In basically they can't do the process in air, right? The data basically which the computer contains, according to that only they are doing the process. So for artificial intelligence, assume that there are thousands of database, right, available in the market. Thousands of database available in the market, you can purchase any of the database and then basically become the artificial intelligence software, create the artificial intelligence software. For that basically AWS is also there. AWS has basically lots of services basically, you can say, for artificial intelligence also. There are many services. Many services are there, and few basically services provides a database also. You don't have to create the database also. So that type of technology basically the world has reached. AWS is there. AWS basically provides lots of services, lots of ready-made tools, lots of things are there. Lots of sometime I think ready-made databases are also basically with them, because it's a services, right? It's a API, and API basically anybody can sell. The previously basically the services basically was sold through the CDs. through the CDs. Basically, they were selling their services, right? Services means software APIs. Nowadays, basically, the AWS taken the place. AWS Amazon basically has taken the place. So he is basically the seller of the CDs. Of the CD basically contains API. So here basically CD is their server basically you can say, and their server basically shares the data, right? And you can allocate the space also. Previously basically the writable CD was also getting. Here the writable CD is their space basically. You can write whatever you want to write, but you have to pay the money as per the service you are using. That's all. This is basically the services. This is basically the AWS. This is the Amazon Power. That you can purchase whatever you want to, but you have to pay the money. That's all. Pure business basically we can say. So take the service, pay the money. That's all. Whatever service you have taken, according to that basically you are going to get the services from the Amazon, from the Amazon group, AWS group. So that's basically the simple pure basically you can say business level. Take the service, give the money. That's all. So this is all this some same way basically the city creation also happens. If you want this services activation in this city, then basically you have to pay the money. For example, 24 lakh crore amount has been invested by the businessman. So government is going to take the responsibility, right? Government is going to take the responsibility that where to spend which type of money, because they have to give the balance sheet also that to the businessman where basically you have paid the money. Because ultimately that businessmen basically are going to submit their balance sheet in front of the public. That is also there. That is also there, right? Basically, and public basically who is going to check the balance sheet? Public basically never checks the balance sheet. The company basically submits their balance sheet every year, but public never checks that, right? Public never checks that, and basically nobody checks the balance sheet. But actually, it's supposed to be checked by the public only. They should basically know their money basically where it's getting used. So that's basically different topic. That's different topic. Who are basically the paying the tax? It's basically their headache basically. They if they want to know whether the tax basically which they are paying, where it is basically getting used and what is the benefit they are getting basically, right? If they are not getting the benefits, then basically they can do the complaint, right? That to the tax government that basically we are paying the this much tax basically, but whatever facility I want basically that I am not getting. So it might possible that in future whatever services he want, he might get after certain time basically he might get the facility, because not a single mail are basically ignored by the government. That basically you have to remember always, because city creation has happened. That's why. And in city creation, mail basically ID is created by the government, and that ID is basically used by the public, and public is basically using these services. So this is also basically coming into one of the creations of the city. This is also basically coming in the one of the creation of the city. So 24 lakh basically amount has used, sorry, going to be used, and basically this data as per the creation happens. Bollywood basically groups are not going to directly, sorry, after entire city's creation happened, that time basically Bollywood groups are not going to jump into the city, right? They are going to go step by step only. As the creation has happening by the government, they are basically directly connected with the government, right? They are basically directly connected with the government. How basically they are connecting, that basically their problem. So there might be some source basically, right? There might be some physical source and the virtual source. Physical source is must. Physical source is must. So as per the city creation is happening, as per the money is getting spent in the city, the services are getting activated, and as per the activation the Bollywood groups have to design each and everything basically, right? Because whatever things the city is going to do, that basically by default they have to display, right? They have to display in front of the, where basically they are displaying that basically we it's very difficult to say. Basically Bollywood groups are reporting to which groups basically? Bollywood groups are, for example, the income tax department is there, right? So they are directly reporting to whom? That basically nobody knows, right? They might be telling that we are reporting to the prime minister, we are reporting to the president, but prime minister and presidents also basically they might be reporting to some group, right? So this basically gets changed. So that is basically the reporting groups basically problem. So here basically we were discussing that 24 lakh crore is the amount, and that amount basically is going to be paid in certain groups, and that certain professional groups are going to give services to the city. That's all. This is the simple basically word. And there are basically n number of services which is already created in this world. Basically we assume that this is not new city basically. This is very old. Lots of cities are created, and after that basically the cities are created, right? After this all cities are created, then this city is basically getting created. So they basically started activating the services, whatever the necessary things basically they required, the city creation required. First of all, basically the foods basically required, right? Before foods, basically people have to stay basically there. So before stay, basically they have to get the certain level of source of income also. For that, basically the source of income basically gets generates. For source of income basically there are many areas like business are there, shops are there, malls are there. Then basically the normal person basically do the services. Few normal people basically they open the small shops. Few people basically do the other businesses, and few people basically do the small services, and few people basically who are educated and who have a good experience they do the good level of services and gets the money income. So that basically is there. So like this basically the government says that we are basically spending the money, businessmen are basically giving the money, we are spending the money in the proper channel, and exactly basically we have to display each and every thing. Why? Because the 24 crore basically which money the businessman group has allocated to the government, to that city, the government, the currency department are going to print the certain level of money only, right? It's a digital, right? It's a digital, right? 24 crore basically he's not going to pay in cash, right? It's a digital world. So currency amount basically which is going to be created, going to be used in the city, that currency number also by basically by default going to print. Currency numbers are also basically going to be print, right? And few people says that the currency department only handles the balance sheet. Up to that level basically the technology they have created. For example, I will take one example. 24 crore amount basically has spended, and according to that spend basically the return also has to be happened. So this side basically they have the returns that in the spent area, wherever the one side basically the it's a spent areas, and other side basically according to the spent areas the amount is basically getting recovered, because you can't mix the amount, right? It might possible that one certain groups have basically spent, the city government basically has spent lots of money to the certain groups, and few group basically they have not spent the money. So according to that spend only basically they are going to get the return, right? So like this basically the like this the income tax department, sorry, the currency department basically says that we basically handles the each and every data basically. We handles the each and every data, right? So we can just imagine basically the uh, critical level of the city creation also, because it's not easy, right? Whatever money basically the businessman is going to spend, that by default basically one day is going to ask, right? So that is basically the 24 lakh crore, the money which basically he is going to spend. Sorry, he is already spent to the government, and government is basically sending to the city, right? Government is spending to the city. government is spending the amount to the city, right? In city creation. So in city creation, basically, the first of all, the government department gets create because they are going to handle the thing, right? Then the each and every basically whatever the health sector, malls, shops, residence areas, companies gets created. So each and everything basically this all basically the normal thing basically, right? If you see one city, then basically each and every creation comes into your mind automatically. You can see the commercial complex, then basically commercial complex are get you can create the commercial complex. If you see the hospital, then basically the hospitals need to create. If you see the company, then basically the company needs to create. Like this, basically the entire city basically gets creates, right? And that is basically the real world. There basically you can touch the each and every commercial complex and each and everything basically, right? But there is basically few people says that this apple is Vadodara, this apple is grapes. Sorry, this grapes is Vadodara. Then basically he basically was surprised basically what actually he want to say, what actually he want to say. So he told that there are lots of city basically they converts their energy into certain level of objects, which basically if you eat that object, then basically you gets the entire Vadodara city energy inside your body, and that gets manipulated. So just to see that technology has reached up to the dangerous level. It's not very dangerous. It's very dangerous. If you are eating one Vadodara entire energy in your body, then basically you can just imagine the thing basically, right? And like this type of thing basically is already created also, and lots of people basically has eaten this also. So now basically the maintenance is also ongoing. So that is also basically is going. So that's why basically previously it was like that, right? Now basically the things basically has changed. Few area basically creates the vegetable. For example, there are 100 kilometers of the one city which is going to create. So in this 100 kilometer basically for few for 1 or 2 kilometer they told that basically we are going to create this many buildings, and the energies the buildings are these buildings are basically the source of this building energy is vegetable. Means this 1 to 2 kilometer area is going to generate vegetable. That is also capsicum, as in the brown capsicum. So like this 100 kilometer gets divided into the each and every human needs of the city, right? Why they created like that? Basically, for example, you are doing some investment in the city. For example, you want the return also. That basically income department basically I have told that it's 124 crore invested and they have written in one side, and according to they have invested in the certain sector, and then according to the sector basically they have to get the money back also. That side basically they have written the left and right side. Basically you can say it's a balance sheet, right? Whatever money you are invested in the sector, from that sector basically you are getting how much, and according to the investment you should get the certain good level of money also, right? The city basically nowadays people, for example, if one businessman told that we basically want the return as a long term also and the short term also. So this basically some basically incomes some energy basically comes into the long term and some energy comes into the short term also. So energies income basically are the big level of income, right? For example, one person told that I have invested the 24 lakh crore basically has invested by the businessman, and businessman told that we have created few owners. We have created few owners. Few owners means they told that this all are our people and they are going to spend the money, and government is going to give money to back to us. So that basically the different thing basically you can say. From that basically you can't get the 24 crore back, right? It's very difficult, right? If you create few certain level of good level of computer software company also, there also basically you are not going to get certain level of good level of money. You created call center, you created companies, but the expenses are also there, right? You created, assume that you created lots of stadiums, but stadium basically daily does not get match gets comes, right? Match basically don't the ground basically the people don't play the cricket daily, right? The cricketers basically don't play the cricket daily. It's basically sometime basically, right? Because if one person told that here basically daily matches happen, then basically public is not going to spend the entire basically each and every day to the cricket ground, right? Because they have to do their work also. They have to earn the money also. Then if they are not earning, then basically how they are going to eat the food, how they are going to survive their house. So it's like that. So cricket basically comes few time, right? Few periodical time. So that type of income basically the government told that we have generated here. But that comes into the not from there also basically you can't recover the money, right? You can't recover the money. Then one person told that how basically the apple is tasting like apple, how the grapes is tasting like grapes, how the rice basically is tasting like rice, how the water basically it's taste like a water basically, how basically this is done basically, right? There might be some without adding basically the medicine basically you can't do this, right? Without adding a special type of chemicals or medicine basically or drugs you can say, you can't create the taste, right? You can't create the taste, right? For example, one person told that I am eating the apple juice. So apple juice basically is having the certain level of taste, right, in your body. Then only basically you can say that yeah, this is basically the apple. So to get that apple, to have that apple, the taste is basically also has to create. The taste also has to be create. For that basically few people says that we have, government says that we have done spent lots of money in this also. That source is also there basically for the government. So like this way also basically the things gets creates, but this all are basically the short term. It's not a big level income is not going to generate. So big level income is this only, that is basically the energy basically gets creates, and according to the energy human needs gets creates. That is basically the oil, petrol, foods, vegetables that gets creates, and basically that are spent to the, that are basically sold to the different countries basically, and there basically the big level of money gets. So this is basically the nowadays the big level income basically you can say, which is basically already generated by the certain level of countries basically. Lots of country basically has created this type of income, and now basically they are earning the lots of money also, right? It's not like that they are not earning the money. They are earning the good level of money. They are earning the good level of money basically you can say. So it's not so that they are not earning the money. So 24 lakh basically the income basically which was created by, sorry, the spend basically which was done by the businessman to the government, the currency department has printed that this many sector has basically the spent the money, and according to that basically the city creation has happened, and that another side basically whatever spent has happened by the so, to the spent has happened to certain sectors. According to that sector basically how many money is basically return has happened. It's very simple, right? The simple level of talking basically you can say what the currency department basically have the entire level of data, right? So like this the data gets print, data are basically getting printed by the government. So like this is also basically you can say one type of income. So this is basically the bigger level income, right? From this basically you can easily recover the 24 lakh crore money. 24 lakh crore money. So like this basically you just few people says that we are investing the money, but we are not getting the money back as much basically the from within the time basically. There are lots of time setting. So basically, if you are doing the investment, if you are doing the investment in certain level of human need creation, there basically money are also basically has to be spent up to that level, basically, right? To create one apple, basically, you need to spend at least 1 to 2 lakh crore, right? Then only basically you can get the. But after creation of the apple, after creation of that city, then basically it's the money only you are going to get, right? But that time you have to take care of that city, basically, right? You have to take care of the natural disaster. You have to take care of the earthquakes. That all thing basically you have to take care because you are spended that much money. So basically you have to secure your that city also up to that level, right? So this is also basically one of the level of city creation. So this is basically the 195 part. In 196, basically we are going to discuss a little bit more about the city creation.